selected by each district last spring, either the 2019 end of the year or the 2020 end of the year. This is simply the necessary way to calculate school funding based on how the SEEK formula exists in statute. SEEK funding is always calculated from the prior year's attendance. This language selected by each district this language, if the bill is passed, will be as it was in Senate Bill 177, and allows district to measure participation. That's something that we did within that bill, and we're reverting back to they could measure participation this year rather than attendance. So we're saying that they can use not the year 19 or the year 20 to assess their SEEK funding, which was a huge part of and component of this bill. Because without the attendance data, there is simply no way to calculate the funding. However, going forward, beginning next year, attendance will be required for the calculation of SEEK that year and the years following. So we want to make that clear that starting next year, there will be in-person counts. This bill also requires the districts to submit their plan for non-traditional instruction in the upcoming school year to the Department of Education by May the 1st. This is their district plan to implement the already statutory 10 days of NTI and nothing more. This is in addition to all other information that the schools provide KDE in their comprehensive plan. So this is something KDE is requiring now. We had 10 statutory days available for NTI, but pre-COVID, and some schools chose to use those. Some did not participate in NTI. This is just saying that going forward, they will have to present a plan to KDE how they are going to use those. And finally, it gives flexibility in the classroom for 30 minutes, and it's about 5 minutes each instructional day to wash hands or take temperatures or provide for social distancing. So that is within the bill. This bill, I will tell you, is a priority because without it, we have no way of calculating SEEK going forward. And March the 4th is the deadline, so it's very important. Again, I want to emphasize this allows for this current year only. When school starts this fall, we fully expect all schools to operate as normal. However, I want to ensure that all schools are open for this year's instruction. I think it's time that across the Commonwealth we have in-person instruction, and we need children back on the radar, not only for their educational instruction, but to also monitor their well-being. And again, we had a committee sub which clearly states that this is for this year only, except for the sections where I explained how SEEK would be calculated going forward, and also that they would have to provide for the NTI instruction. First and foremost, I want to clear up some misconceptions. Again, it's for this year only. This bill requires all schools to return to in-person instruction. The reason for the minimum listed of 80-40 was, quite frankly, there's a large school that was already having some conversations regarding whether they would remain virtual for the rest of the year, and to me that wasn't acceptable. So I felt those students needed to have face-to-face contact. At least, they've been quite off the radar since March of last year. So it was important to me that they be back within an instructional capacity. I wanted to ensure that it mandated for a manageable return and something that could not be disputed. So in looking at it, I got a lot of advice from individuals that shared with me what they thought could be manageable and could not be questionable in the return. So that is why that it required all districts to do an 80-40, a hybrid, by March the 29th, to be in the physical classroom for at least 4 days a week, and require that students have access to the classroom at least 2 days a week. This also aligns with KDE's incentive for schools to return. And I think if you look at the map, you will see that the majority of schools are returning. My district has the majority 4 or 5 days a week, and Laurel County has been completely back opening all children for quite some time. They actually never missed a beat. So it is doable and it's important. This amendment allows students upon written request to continue remote instruction for the rest of the school year. If the family decides that they don't want to return, they have to have that in written form, but they can change their mind as long as they make a written request. it still adds a lot of local control. You are capable. This bill does nothing to keep you from returning to school full time, 5 days a week, all kids, all students involved. What it does do is address areas that are quite large that thought it wasn't possible. This makes it possible and doable, and mandates they do so.
Madam Chair, if I could, we do have a committee sub.
Yes.
If we could maybe move on that sub and give
Okay.
a brief explanation, if that's all right with you.
All right.
Members, if you do refer to your folders, there is a committee sub. A brief explanation. Basically, the Senate committee sub simply clarifies that districts that do not return all students by March 29th on at least a hybrid schedule will not be eligible to continue their flexible funding nor to receive the additional 5 NTI days.
Exactly.
I'm open for discussion, but do we have a motion to accept the committee sub? We have a motion. Do we have a second? We have a second. All those in favor of accepting the committee sub do so by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, committee sub's adopted. Please proceed.
Thank you. And I appreciate that committee sub. I think it's important that we clarify that and make that clear that we're not override any executive orders or anything else. And I do like that we've got that part in place as well. I will allow Chuck to add any further information, technical or otherwise.
I have nothing to add, Madam Chair, other than we do support the bill. We do support the committee sub from the Senate, and we're available for any questions you may have.
We do have one question. Senator Stivers.
It's not a question. It's more of a comment. Thank you, Representative Bunch, as being one of the representatives that cross the district. I think my chair is sinking.
I'm Representative Huff now.
I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry.
Senator Stivers, you would think.
I'm sorry.
But go ahead, proceed.
You never fail to correct me. But I do want to make a comment about the Laurel County school system. It has been up and running. And if I'm not badly mistaken, it's like the 12th largest school system in the state with approximately 10,000 students. And both you and I are very aware of it. I don't think they've had any problems returning.
You're correct that the only problems that they have experienced has been the lack of substitutes across the board, and that is a problem everyone is facing. But they have maintained a full schedule all the way through.
So with that, I'd really, as we sit here and think about that, the 10th or 12th largest school system, I think there's over 10,000 students that go there, and they've been able to return successfully. It's amazing.
Thanks, Senator Stivers.
Sorry.
Senator Southworth.
I have at least a question to start with, and maybe others will come up with others, but I'm trying to figure out what we need 5 NTI days in addition to if we're only doing 40% in person anyway. So they're not and we're talking about something that goes into effect a month before the end of the school year. I'm just trying to figure out what the need is for that.
Thanks for the question, Senator. And this is something that we've tried to address with that issue. I think, as Senator Stivers said earlier in the week, Beattyville is underwater right now. It's not unthinkable that other weather events could happen in the spring, and those districts that might need. NTI was originally designed about 10 years ago with the help of Senator Givens and others for inclement weather, for flu days, things of that nature. And the 5 NTI days would allow them, in situations like are happening right now, if that happens in April, they could take advantage of those 5 NTI days. But the Senate committee substitute does limit them to 5 days and 5 days only. They couldn't get any more than that, and if they had to go beyond that, they would essentially just cancel school those days and extend their school calendar, as has been traditional in past years.
Senator Thomas.
Thank you, Chairman Wise. I have one question for Representative Huff and one question for Mr. Truesdale.
Proceed.
Thank you, sir. Representative Huff, my one question to you is simply this. What does local control mean to you when we talk about each of the 177 school districts that exist here in the Commonwealth of Kentucky?
It means that their decisions will be made at that local level.
Mr. Truesdale, my question to you is simply this. Did KDE have any input in the creation of House Bill 208, or more importantly, its Senate committee substitute?
Yes, Senator Thomas. We are very grateful to Senator Wise and Senate leadership for working with us to craft a Senate committee substitute that I think everybody can live with. Obviously, I think we would like all students to return to the classroom as quickly as possible, but in some cases that's just not feasible for some districts, and this sets a high baseline that all districts can abide by. I would point out that shortly after the House version passed last week, Jefferson County Public Schools, their board voted to go back and can accommodate both the version that passed the House and can also accommodate the version that is in the Senate committee sub, and I think all parties are pleased on that end.
Senator West.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question goes to the committee sub. I think I would direct this at Mr. Truesdale. Explain to us, boots on the ground, what that looks like. I'm just trying to get my head wrapped around, make sure I'm correct. So when it says 80% of the instructional time consisting of a minimum of 40% in-person instruction, so does that require a 4-day week or could it be 2 days for any child?
Essentially, the way it works, Senator, is, and a lot of districts have been doing this for quite a while now, it's essentially an A-B hybrid model where, for instance, on Monday and Wednesday, half of the students are in the classroom, the other half are virtual. On Tuesday and Thursday, the half that were virtual the other days are in the classroom, and vice versa. And then Friday, everybody's virtual, and they do the deep cleaning of the school facilities. But the 80-40 ensures that every student has access to the classroom at least 2 days a week. That means that teachers and staff can actually lay eyes on that student. They can give them that personal instruction that they have not been getting on a virtual basis. But it still allows for that flexibility in terms of adhering to CDC guidance. It adheres to the KDE financial incentives that we have been offering through the ESSER II grants. And it allows districts that are, quite frankly, don't think it's feasible for them to go back 100% of the time, allows them to do that. This is again, that is a minimum. That is not a maximum. It doesn't limit districts from offering 100% in-person instruction at all.
Thank you.
Senator Southworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got a follow-up. I'm seeing on the committee sub, it says March 29th is our date certain where this is going to be essentially going to affect, and the committee sub we had in yesterday's meeting says March 22nd. And I'm trying to figure out, if we were telling schools last fall, you got, 20 hours notice to switch your plan, how come we're waiting a month to get started here?
Well, I'll let Chuck speak to that as well. But it was a situation where there was spring breaks and things going, and basically to give a larger school system the opportunity to make the decision to return and then to implement the return. But like I said, if you look at the map, the majority, this will not, March 29th will not even be applicable because they are already in school instruction at least 4 days a week, the majority with all children.
And to also speak to that question, Senator Southworth, it's a very good question. But from a practical standpoint, some districts, one in particular, as you might guess, really had to jump through a lot of hoops to make the March 29th deadline happen under the House version. And there was the potential of catastrophic delays, big problems in Jefferson County if they tried to meet a March 22nd deadline. And that was, frankly, a risk that we did not want to take because things are going smoothly there right now in terms of the planning to meet that March 29th deadline. And we were afraid that something bad could happen because they put so much work and effort into meeting the timeline that they're already working on.
And if I just might add, you have to understand that as we have said, there was no plan to return. So that means that transportation, food staff, just staff, substitutes, everything had to make sure that was in place before they get started, because we don't want them to be back to school and missing 10 subs and have 3 classes in the cafeteria spread out, or 3 classes in the gymnasium spread out. We want them to be in class, in seat, having daily normal instruction.
Please proceed.
Can I make a follow-up comment?
Briefly,
probably?
we have members behind you.
I can appreciate, the school district needing to have some time to get their act together, and I certainly was against the, 11.5-hour changes last fall. But I do think that we need to remember there is a court order that I thought the 22nd date came from, and the issue there was, are we providing a constitutional required education to our students? If we have school districts that aren't prepared to bus children or aren't prepared with staff, who I believe we're all paying for in these SEEK funds, because they're getting to choose which year they have had a full attendance. If we're going to be paying all of that money and not even getting the constitutional baseline of education because their staff's not ready to go, Mr. Chairman, I'm concerned if our staff's not been working, then what have they been doing, and are we paying the same amount of money? That's a big issue to me. So I don't know that's solved in this bill, but that definitely needs to be looked at even further.
Thank you. Senator Meredith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representative Huff. I appreciate the job that you do, and you're in the education field one of my heroes. You're a teacher's teacher. I know that you are. I appreciate your passion for the school system and the kids. But did I hear you say that one of these monumental obstacles that we had with this school system that's unnamed is they did not have a plan to return?
Well, from what we had been informed and votes that had been taken with certain groups within there, they had indicated that it was unlikely that they would return this school year. Chuck can probably speak further to that.
So that almost seems like it's predestined, and just that's very bothersome that there's no contingency plan to return. It's just inconceivable to me that apparently they made the decision very early on that wasn't going to happen, and particularly that school district, as problem as it is, and so many kids are failing, and we've heard the statistic about the number of kids they've lost in the system, and it appears they never had any intentions of returning to the classroom. That's staggering.
It was concerning, and when we understood that was the conversations that they were having, that was what implemented. I would love to say everyone return, and let's, because I know the importance of education, and I know what the damage that it's been done to children across a continuum of variables because of this closure. However, I'm a realist. I wanted to make sure that there wouldn't be any questionable problems that they would come up with, in any school to return, because I think it's that important. And when the conversations that we were hearing indicated that for this school year there was conversations that they would not be returning and would remain virtual for the remainder of this year, it was concerning enough that we wanted to make sure that wasn't what happened.
And I would make a slight correction. Superintendent Polio and the staff at JCPS have been working for months to try to develop a plan. However, as you know, local control means the school board gets to decide. And so I think House Bill 208, as it passed the House, was the nudge they needed to get the board to go along with the plan that Superintendent Polio had developed. And that was a long time in coming, and we were happy to see that. The concern was that moving it up to the 22nd would sort of break the camel's back and destroy the progress that they had made to get kids back in school at that time.
Mr. Chair, I'm still just absolutely bewildered that there was not a plan to return to school. To Senator Thomas's point about local control, certainly all for that, but in light of what happened in the Jefferson County school system over the last decade and the threat of the state taking over that school system, this whole thing is just inconceivable to me that this whole situation even exists. And is it the Jefferson County's school system, or is it Jefferson County Teachers Association that's the obstacle to getting these kids back in the classroom? Because this system in Jefferson County is failing these children, particularly minority children. And I'm sorry, Mr. It's just inconceivable to me that we're in this situation right now. And I appreciate you trying to address this with this. And I think in our rural areas, we're trying our best to get back to this. But, we haven't even talked about the impact this has on working families. I don't know how they're surviving in Jefferson County, but it's just, again, inconceivable to me that there was not a plan in place. And I appreciate that Superintendent Polio has been working on this. I got a lot of respect for him. Think he's done a great job what he's got to work with, but working on the plan is not the same as having a plan. And there should have been one. The priority should have been getting those kids back in school. And I know all of us received hundreds of emails, hundreds, predominantly from Jefferson County, parents saying, we want our kids back in school. I don't understand why that school board is not hearing those parents. And again, if we're going to focus on local control, maybe the start was they need a new school board in Jefferson County. But I'm just truly bewildered by this and dismayed that there's not a plan. But I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, I'm not going to belabor it. But
Well, I think that your concerns are warranted and have merit. I mean, we can't control those election cycles and what happens there or the decisions they make. In fact, this wasn't a unanimous vote for the amount that we give them, but there wasn't really an argument strong enough. And I think that this was given the parameters that we set, the guardrails, that they really couldn't argue or have enough reasoning behind their argument to not return to the specifications and mandates here.
I appreciate it, but we've heard a lot about systemic racism this last year, and during this session we're here. But and I can argue, I'm not sure that is for real, but based on this issue alone, yeah, I think it's real, because it's having a disproportionate impact on minority children in Jefferson County, and apparently nobody cares. But thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
And I don't want to say as well, Jefferson County has some of the best and brightest and some of the unbelievable educators, but sometimes that gets lost in the shuffle of the political realm, and that's what we wanted to ensure, that those over 101,000 students had a face-to-face contact and at least 2 days of instruction in person.
Senator Higdon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I have 2 questions, if you don't mind. I saw somewhere that some states had implemented, and maybe even the CDC had talked about a 3-foot rule rather than the 6-foot rule as far as distancing in school. So I know that would probably make things a little easier when they go back in person. I too would disappointed that we're not doing the 22nd. I think that's even too late. But probably what bothers me more than anything when I look on Mr. Google, we tell them we're going to go back to school on the 29th. Jefferson County starts spring break on the 26th. So they're not even back the first week of April. So they're not actually returning to school till whatever that next Monday is, April 4 or something like that.
I will say, Senator, the CDC guidance seems to be ever evolving. The latest that I've seen said it's still 6 feet is the recommended, but if you can't achieve that, then you could do the pods or the groups to limit the spread if that is necessary. But as you know, and one of the purposes for the local control here is that some districts have larger buildings than others. Some are overcrowded school buildings. And so this allows them to make those decisions based on their local circumstances. I'm sorry, what was the second part of the question?
Spring break.
Sorry. That actually speaks to why I think March 22nd versus March 29th is not just a 1-week issue, it's a 2-week issue. A lot of districts already had spring break scheduled. We don't want to take that away and reschedule things at the last minute for that purpose. Because again, this allows JCPS, as some people may think it's a flawed plan, but it is a plan. It does get kids back in the classroom. And I think that is the beginning of the goal that we all have.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Welcome. Senator West.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I forgot to say earlier, I want to thank Representative Huff for her work on this. And you, like Chairman Wise, are in the midst of these discussions on a daily basis. And as a part-time legislator, there's a lot of hours. So I really appreciate your work on this. But
Thank you.
and this has nothing to do with Representative Huff. I've been pulled into the conversation that the idea of local control. Okay, the Louisville School Board have local control, and they are a policy making body, and they have big decisions to make. But the Senate is a policy making body, and we have big decisions to make. And 60% of our state budget goes to education. So if we're a policy making body, education is a big component of that. And I can't speak for anyone else here, but personally, I'm growing weary of JCPS and them not having their act together and moving the school system forward. Our achievement in Kentucky, a lot of it is based on Jefferson County because of how large it is. And, there are kids, our achievement gaps are going to be horrible at the end of this. We'll find out in a year or so how bad this cohort is. So we're talking about, I want to focus on achievement gaps in workforce. If this isn't resolved quickly, these long-term impacts are going to be through the roof. We're going to be building prisons to take care of this achievement gap. And it's unconscionable what's going on. It's an economic issue. Our kids, our parents can't get back to work because they're taking care of their kids at home. So I'm all about local control, and they have a policy-making job to do, but we have a policy-making job to do here in the Senate as well and in the House. So thank you for this plan. I just hope that we can get back to in-person, full-time, as quickly as possible, and get back to some normalcy. Thank you.
Senator Givens.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And I want to take a moment and again, echo some thanks that have been offered. Representative Huff, your leadership on this, the knowledge this needs to pass. In the absence of this passing, the uncertainty is such that it's going to be difficult for functioning of schools to happen, and our budget's going to continue to send money to these institutions whether they're open or not. In the absence of this passing, we will continue to pay for schools whether they're in person or not. This puts some rigor around that. Thank you for your leadership on it. Thank you for KDE's work, and Chuck, and your involvement in this conversation. We've had Joe Burks on our side doing a lot of work. We've had Chairman Wise. Thank you for gathering this group yesterday. We convened a meeting. We didn't have everything. All the T's weren't crossed and all the I's were not dotted. And so we called an audible on that thanks to your leadership. And we're back today for passage of this, and I am proud to make a motion for the passage of House Bill 208 as amended, that it be reported favorably from this committee. Same should pass.
We have a motion. We also have a second. We do have someone who has signed up in opposition to speak against the bill for a brief opposition that I'm going to grant for 3 minutes for that opposition. Sarah Durand.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also have with me today Steve Ulam, who is a parent in JCPS who also had signed up to speak today.
If we can combine both of you all together for the 3 minutes, that would be greatly appreciated due to the committee room needing to be moved out.
Okay, I will speak very, very quickly. So I'm Sarah Durand. I am the Government Affairs Director for the Bluegrass Institute for Public Policy Solutions. And we take issue with this bill, but I want to talk to you today as a mother who is affected by this bill. 2 of my children are in Jefferson County Public Schools, and they've not seen the inside of a classroom in nearly a year. What they've lost because of that is extraordinary. We don't have a lot of data on NTI because it's not been made available, but JCPS records show that the number of failing grades the first few weeks of the 2020-2021 school year show that they were up 120% in high school and 388% in middle school compared to the first 6 weeks of the previous year. This is why Kentucky law requires that students be in person in the classroom 170 days a year. It's because it's how students learn. I could talk extensively about my own children and the loss of learning and the change in their overall attitudes over the course of this last year, both of which are negative and profound. But what I'd like to talk briefly about is the question of whether or not our schools are safe to open. In Louisville, the YMCA is running a program that helps parents with NTI by providing staff for students in K through 8th in a workspace. And that workspace is in some of our local public schools. My 2 younger children attend this program twice a week, where they go to public school and do public school work with other public school children. I do not send them 5 days a week because it would cost me around $1,200 a month for my children to sit in front of a computer screen all day in a public school where they are babysat instead of having teachers to teach them. So my question is that if schools are safe for the YMCA to open 5 days a week, why aren't they safe for the school districts to open? We're allowing the YMCA to open public schools 5 days a week, then let's all agree that opening our public schools is safe. And if you must pass this bill, we ask that you include a similar amendment to those filed by Representative Rayburn requiring in-person schooling for any child whose family wants that option. Because the point of our education dollars is to educate children, and this bill will continue to stop that from happening.
Thank you, Mr. Duran. Mr. Ulam, real briefly, any follow-up?
Yeah, I'll add that my daughter is also attending that CEP program, but a full 5 days a week, 7 a.m. until 6 p.m., so that I can work in a classroom full of kids. The only difference is instead of a vaccinated teacher in the front of the classroom, it is an unvaccinated babysitter where they do their work every day. Quite frankly, the state and the school board are sending mixed signals to our kids. It's safe for you to learn in school with a babysitter. It's not safe for you to learn in school with a teacher. And to clarify some of the comments that were made here about the local Jefferson County School Board, all parties here were not pleased. The parents, the single parents, the parents of special needs children, we don't have a school board advocating for us. We don't have hundreds of thousands of dollars backing us. We have no voice in this. The parents who have lost their jobs because there is no one else to help out around the house with the kids during the NTI, they would not favor this. The parents who have special needs children who require attention all day long would not favor this bill. The 1,800 people in our group, let them learn in JCPS, do not favor this bill. We are arguing a point against the recommendation of all the frontline workers in our district. Those are local medical professionals, namely Connie White and Sarah Moyer, to name a couple.
Mr. Ulam, we've approached the 4-minute mark. I apologize. We appreciate both of y'all's testimony, but we do have a motion. We do have a second on the bill, and this was a specialty call meeting that we were going to have to move out of this room, but greatly appreciate both of y'all's testimony today. We do have a motion on the bill. We also have a second on the bill. Chris, please call the roll.
Senator Carroll.
Aye.
Senator Givens. Aye. Senator Harper Angel. Senator Higdon.
Explain my aye vote.
Please proceed.
Yeah, I'm voting aye. I still have some concerns, but I understand the dilemma that we're in, and that's so anyway. Thank you.
Senator Kerr. Senator Meredith. Senator Neal. Senator Southworth.
Explain my vote, Mr. Chairman.
Please proceed.
I'm voting no. You know, I'm not going to sit here and we have a deadline we have to meet. I understand that. There was another sub presented last night that I don't think this is a dotting I's, crossing T's issue, and we're changing our instruction time from 4 days to 2 days, and we're funding 5 days, and what we're hearing is that they're in schools 5 days. I don't think that's an acceptable thing I can reward with a yes vote. Certainly, there's always time to work, but at a certain point, when it comes to our constitutional rights of education for every child, we can't sit here and say, oh, it's inconvenient. I don't care how convenient it is. We have to make it happen. That's our job as a state policymaking body, and that's what I'm going to stand for every time.
Senator Stivers. Senator Thomas. Senator West.
No.
Senator Thomas, please proceed.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'm going to vote no. I assume I'm going to be limited to 3 minutes to explain my answer.
Please proceed.
Thank you. Let me begin by saying that I agree with one point that Representative Huff made. I do agree that the definition of local control is that the school board gets to make decisions about how they operate the school. We agree on that statement. Now, I think that includes when schools open, when schools close, the personnel they hire, their curriculum, how they order their transportation. I think that's what local control means. I think we all have to be honest to ourselves in saying that what Senate Bill 208 does, House Bill 208 does today with the Senate committee substitute is just strip away local control. It just takes that away, okay? Because now we're telling schools when they must open and how they must open. I have to say I'm just tickled to hear this conversation about race and systemic injustice, because I've been saying for the 8 years I've sat on this committee about things we need to do to eliminate the achievement gap, and they've fallen on deaf ears. And until we do the things that I've suggested, we're going to continue to have the achievement gaps. And putting these kids back into school on March 29th is not going to eliminate any achievement gaps. I can assure you of that. You know, I too, like all of you, am in close contact with the parents and teachers of my community. I talk to them constantly. Okay, and I can tell you, very few of them, I'm not going to say none of them, but very few of them are clamoring to me that the children in Fayette County must return to school. I mean, these are the people I talk to regularly. I just don't hear that in my community. You know, what happens in Greene County and what happens in Laurel County, I'm all for that because I believe in local control. You know, if that's what they want to do for their communities, to me, that's what local control is, according to the definition that Representative Huff said that I agree with. I think we think COVID-19 is over. I think we think we're done with it. You know, we've beaten it. We have eliminated it, and things can now return to normal. But every day, you know, I listen to the CDC guidance and people on the President Biden's task force dealing with COVID-19, and they tell me just the opposite, that we're still in a state of emergency and that we have to wear our mask and wash our hands and social distance, and COVID-19 is far from over. And so because it's not over, I think schools need to make their own decisions under local control as to how they decide to open. Again, this bill takes that control away, and for that reason, Mr. Chair, I'm voting no on House Bill 208.
Senator West.
Aye.
Senator Wilson. Chairman Wise.
Aye.
Senator
Senator Kerr, yes.
Yes, thank you. I had to step into a committee meeting, and I would like to cast an aye vote on this.
Senator Kerr casts an aye vote.
Thank you.
The motion does pass by a vote of 9-2. Members, thank you all for being present. Thank you all that testified today. Representative, thank you for the bill.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
We are adjourned. Thank you all.